Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving into the story of a military commander who was so brilliant, so utterly dominant, that he's still a legend of battlefield tactics almost 1,400 years after he died. You know, when you think of the greatest generals in history, a few names probably pop into your head, right? Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Hannibal. But what if I told you that one of the most successful commanders who ever lived, a guy who won over 100 battles and never lost, is often left out of that conversation? Well, we're going to change that. His name was Khalid ibn al-Walid. He lived during the time of the Prophet Muhammad, and his skill in warfare was so extraordinary that he earned the incredible title you see right here, Saifullah al-Maslul. That translates to the drawn sword of God. I mean, what a nickname. So how did one man become such a towering figure? To really understand Khalid, you've got to get inside his head and see how he approached warfare. He wasn't just about brute force. He was a master strategist who completely changed the game. Just let that number sink in for a second. Over 100 battles. And these weren't all just little skirmishes. We're talking massive, empire-defining wars, and not a single loss. Not one. That record alone puts him in a class all by himself. But it's how he did it that is just so fascinating. So what was his secret sauce? Well, his tactics feel incredibly modern. Back then, you had these giant empires like the Byzantines and Persians who relied on these huge, slow-moving walls of infantry. Khalid? He did the exact opposite. His armies were all about lightning-fast mobility and speed. He constantly used the element of surprise, hitting his enemies where they were weakest. He was also a master of psychological warfare, breaking their morale before a single sword was swung. And maybe most importantly, his goal was never just to win. It was to annihilate the enemy force so they could never come back and fight him again. And this right here, this was one of his signature moves, the pincer movement, or double envelopment. Let me paint a picture for you. At the Battle of Walaja, he's facing a much larger Persian army, so he sends his infantry to hit their center, drawing them into a trap. But what they don't know is that he's hidden his best cavalry behind some nearby hills. Right when the fighting is at its fiercest, his cavalry comes thundering around the sides, crashing into the Persian rear. Suddenly, they're trapped, getting hit from all sides. The entire army just collapses. It was pure tactical genius.
So, all of this brings us to the battle that would cement his legacy forever. You know, every great general has that one defining moment, their absolute masterpiece. For Khalid ibn al-Walid, that moment was the Battle of the Yarmouk against the full might of the Byzantine Empire.
Okay, just look at these numbers. It's insane. Khalid's army was outnumbered at least 2-1, maybe even more. And he was facing the professional, heavily armored legions of the Byzantine Empire, a global superpower at the time. I mean, on paper, this should have been a complete slaughter. And it almost was. This was not a quick fight. For 6 brutal, exhausting days, the two armies just hammered away at each other. The Byzantines threw absolutely everything they had at Khalid's forces, pushing them right to the absolute brink of collapse. The stakes were just unbelievably high. At one point, some of Khalid's fighters actually started to fall back. The line was about to break. But then, something amazing happened. The women who were in the army camp, led by this formidable woman named Hind, saw what was happening, and they were not having it. They grabbed tent poles, formed a line, and started singing songs of valor, basically shaming and inspiring the men to turn around and get back into the fight. Can you even imagine that scene? That moment of just total commitment completely re-energized the army. Khalid, being the genius he was, seized the opportunity. He launched one final, decisive cavalry charge that just shattered the Byzantine lines. That single victory ended Byzantine rule in Syria and literally changed the map of the world. But here's where the story takes this surprising and honestly kind of heartbreaking turn. For a man who lived his entire life in the chaos of battle, surrounded by the clash of steel, his own end was, well, not what you'd expect. These are said to be Khalid's final words. He'd always wanted to die a martyr, a glorious death for a warrior in battle. He saw his body, covered in scars, as proof of his life's work. But instead, he was destined to die from an illness, in his own bed. You can just feel the profound disappointment, the warrior's anguish in those words. But it was his wife who gave him this incredible perspective. She reframed the whole thing. She told him, essentially, your title is the Sword of God. And God's sword isn't meant to be broken in battle. Your destiny wasn't to die a martyr. It was to die whole, as what you truly are, an undefeated conqueror. What a powerful way to look at it. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. Khalid ibn al-Walid had a life of just unparalleled success on the battlefield, but he died quietly far away from the action. So it makes you wonder, what truly cements a legacy? Is it the glory of all the triumphs in life, or is it the story of how that life ends? If you enjoyed this deep dive into history, do me a favor and hit that like button, and make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next explainer. Thanks so much for watching.